Hello, welcome you Grots and Gits today. Take this, not that, Forge World Edition. I've got a beautiful picture of the immortal Mr. Jack Harpster here. And guys, while I'm going to talk a little bit of crap about one of his calls, I want everyone to be aware that he is an amazing player, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and actually I've learned quite a bit from him. However, he did make the call that the Caladius gravity tank was awesome, and it's not. And I'm going to show it to you in this PowerPoint, wherein we're talking about all of the super cool and unfortunately fairly irrelevant additions to the Custodes Forge World Edition. And this is going to be talking about all the Forge World units and why you may or may not want to consider some of them. But fear not, this is not a negative post. There are amazing options in the Custodes Index. It's just perhaps this edition, we're looking more towards our actual index and not necessarily towards our Forge World datasheets. But stay tuned because I'm going to go through all in depth. If you have questions about the Caladius, I will answer every single one of them. Here we go. Let's jump right into it. Starting with Forge World Dreadnoughts for the Custodes. It's actually, unfortunately, quite hard to use any of these, and this is sad because last edition, these bad boys were nightmares. They were just absolutely brutalizing our opponents left and right with our -1 damage and the 2-up armor and the invulns and the mortal wound protection. They were huge, huge jerks, and I loved fielding them. The Caladius right now is probably the most usable of all the dreads, but his movement of 6 is pretty brutal. He does have that 4-up invuln, which is super nice, and he is a -1 to wound in melee. If he was always -1 to wound in melee, I think we'd probably be talking. But for the points cost of, I believe it's a 185, could be 175, he is very hard to justify using him when he will literally never get to combat. That 6-inch movement is terrible. He does actually get the ability to fall back, shoot, and charge, and I like that quite a lot, but I don't think he cuts it. Then we look at the Achilles. This guy is cheap. He dropped all the way down to 155 points, and that is about the only great thing he has going for him because all of his damage profiles dropped. His special ability is kind of bad. He generally will cause D3 or 3 flat mortal wounds in the combat phase. But he lost strength, he lost damage, he lost AP, his shooting got significantly worse, and he doesn't have the -1 damage or the feel no pain at all, just like all the other dreads, and that is a big, big problem. And then finally we have Mr. Telamon. He went down in points, which made me very excited because I thought I'd get to use the Punchy Boy. The problem is in current melee rules, you can only use one melee weapon, so giving him Double Fist does literally nothing. There's no point in giving him Double Fist. You're always going to bring one of the guns and a fist, or maybe 2 of the guns if you like to live dangerously. However, his damage output is terrible, and I'm going to prove it to you. Let me show you the damage spreadsheets here right now. And this is the damage spreadsheets. So I'm just going to scroll on down to Mr. Telamon. Here he is. He's right in the middle of the screen, if you can see that. This is points spent per points killed. So the PPP, or essentially the trading value. So a PPP of 1 is really, really good. It means that you killed your points worth in a single activation. And as you can see, he does not have a very good PPP. Let's just look at him. Here, let me show you the guns that we're comparing. So this is going to be his Arachnus Storm Cannon by 2. So this is if he has 2 Arachnus Storm Cannons. He's got a PPP of 3 into Termagants, 2.7 into Battle Sisters, 4 into Chosen, 3 into Purgators, 4.5 into Lich Guard, meaning he's just not efficient trading into any of the things that you want to trade him into. Then let's go ahead and check out the Elastus. So this is the Elastus gun. This is the one that has a little bit more pop, pop, pop. And the Elastus gun actually has way worse trading into all the weaker things, and just overall it has really worse trading. And this is with 2 guns, guys. This isn't just with 1. So realistically, because you will probably be running them with a melee weapon, all the PPP is literally 50% worse than it shows right here. So basically, and then we finally look at his melee, and this is the bottom one where it says Kestis or Cestus. I never know how to say that. So we have 11.3 into Termagants, 7.3 into Battle Sisters, and just moving around into the big units, 3.4 into the Knight Despoiler, and an 8.6 into the Knight Valiant. This is all really, really bad. He is not worth the points, and honestly, he's not that tough. He does have 12 wounds and the -1 damage, but basically anything that wants to focus him down will focus him down. So, sorry everybody, the Dreadnoughts just aren't quite making a cut the edition, but something else might. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Quickly, we'll just talk about the Coronis and the Palace. The Coronis, there is some potential use with this. I actually like him. 200 points, and he gets to carry a squad plus a leader, which we can't do in the Land Raider, because the Land Raider only lets you get 6 models. So the Coronis, though, could get you a full 6-man squad with a leader, which is actually really, really cool. And then they get to advance and charge, which is kind of cute. But the problem is that we can already get advance and charge in our army now by just having a blade champion for 100 points instead of the 200 points for the Cronus. There's some interesting combinations that you could do there with Cronus dropping off the Sagittarum to give the Sagittarum for full wound rerolls. That's actually pretty cool. But overall, I think this is a middling use. It's definitely not unusable, which is pretty cool for basically a lot of unusable things from our Forge World. And then we have the Palace, and it's just awful. If you don't believe me, I'm just going to show you the data sheet here real quick, or the not the data sheet, the spreadsheet for it. Let's look at the Palace. This is how it trades PPP into Termagants. Basically, it has no good PPP anywhere. Its best PPP is actually into the Necron Warrior or the Knight Valiant. But when we actually look at the damage that it deals, let me just scroll down to the damage for you. So the Palace is right here on line 43. The damage it deals is also quite awful. It's got a 2.0. It's got 2 damage to the Valiant. It's got 1 damage to a Satan. It's got 4 damage to Termagants. It's just terrible. I don't see the point in taking it at all for 120 points. It seems kind of useless, and I've got better things to spend on my Custodes list because Custodes are actually in an amazing place. Okay, cool. Well, let's just pop right back into the PowerPoint. I'm going to talk about the Forge World infantry, and then we'll get into the big Caladius tank. I know everyone wants to hear about that. Forge World infantry with the Adressite and the Pyrothite spears. Sadly enough, these things are not worth it. They just don't cut it. They're short range. I think it's 12 inches and 18 inches respectively, and you're only getting 1 or 2 shots for an additional 15 points per model or 20 points per model over normal Custodian Guard. You're just going to want to stick with normal Custodians and Terminators. They actually have a really, really terrible PPP. I'll show you that when I show you the Aquilin as well. Let me just talk about the Aquilin real quick. The Aquilin, listen guys, GW just has a theme. It thinks the Forge World Terminators should be terrible, and it will always keep them terrible. I don't think they're ever going to be usable in 40k, to be honest with you, which is okay because our normal Aquilin Terminators are amazing. They're incredible. They're one of my favorite units in the entire game right now. They are crushing souls. So we're not really missing out by not getting to use the Aquilin. It's just, why GW? Why have a model that we're never going to be able to take? Anyway, let me show you some of the stats on these bad boys before we get into the Caladius Gravity Tank. Okay, so let me pull it up. I'm just going to switch to the PPP here. If we go right up to the top, we have Guards with Special Spears. Okay, so Guards with Special Spears, the top is the Adressite and the bottom is the Pyrothite. And remember, these are 65 points a model. So your PPP is absolutely abysmal into basically everything. Once you get into your Obliterators and your Carnifexes, it's just bad and not absolutely abysmal, which is nice. But it's not good into anything. So it trades terribly, and you're honestly just going to be a lot better off by saving yourself 20 points per model and getting more Custodian Guards, or trading into a Terminator, which is actually quite freaking awesome. The Aquilin itself is actually even more nightmarishly bad. Wow, that's just awful. Let me look at the actual damage points here. I'm just going to scroll back up to the Aquilin Terminators. Yeah. So Aquilin Terminators right here on line 29. Their damage from their twin Adrathic is wow bad. They're almost never doing a normal 1 point of damage in shooting, which is actually shocking. It's shocking how bad it is. So basically, yeah, guys, we've got better things to do with our points than taking the Forge World Infantry stuff. I'm going to take a break from Forge World Infantry right now, and we will go right into Mr. Caladius, because I know everyone's waiting for it. It is the big boy. Let's talk about the Caladius itself. Here we go. Guys, it's just not good. And I hate saying this because I loved my Caladius last season. In 9th edition, I loved my Caladius. There was at least one in every single army I took. And I got to the top of, I think I was number 2 in Scandinavia for Custodes. I was like number 30 in Europe or something. And that's without playing all that many tournaments, because Custodes were amazing, and my Caladius was freaking awesome. I would not leave home without it. But in 10th edition, I will never take one. Jack Harpster says that they're great. Jack Harpster could win a tournament with a paperclip and a porno magazine, okay? That dude is so amazing at this game. I'm sure he can take some gravity tanks and do really, really well. I just don't see how any of us mere mortals will. Like I said, I actually am pretty dang good at this game. I'm on my country's WTC team. I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. I took these things into knights for a practice game, and like I think between 3 of them, I dealt 3 damage to a big knight, and then they were just all obliterated. So here's the deal. One of these Caladius gravity tanks will kill an armiger, almost. So It's almost going to kill an Armiger. I shouldn't have said it will. It will almost kill an Armiger. I think on average it deals like 10.9 damage. We'll be sure to look at the sheets in just a second. So, really, if you want to make sure that you kill a baby knight, you need 2. 2 will kill a baby knight. If you want any chance of killing a big knight, you need to have 3. That is 645 points. Suddenly you're taking 3 Caladiuses and you're playing with 2/3 of a Custodes army. That's a problem because when you run 3, hopefully you kill that big knight, but you might not. And by might, I mean it's kind of 50-50 actually. And suddenly they will easily kill your Caladiuses in return. And you're playing a very amazing short to medium range army. And a 1/3 of your army just disappeared because you tried to play the long range game in an army that doesn't play the long range game. So if I were you, I would not take Caladiuses. There is a price point, I'm sure, where I would take them, but at 215 points, it's not even close. I would never even consider them, especially considering some of the amazing options we do have in our normal Custodes. And if you don't know about those, I will actually link to my Custodes tier list video, which didn't include the Forge World options, and you can check those out. Maybe it'll be like here or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so Knights will definitely slaughter you back, and yeah, all that stuff. Let me show you the damage because I know people won't believe me off of this. So here are the damage sheets for the Caladius. Okay, going on to it, we'll start on the PPP. I think I got to scroll. Here's the Caladius gravity tank, guys. Okay, line number 49. This is the Arachnus. This is the big cannon that everyone's super, super duper excited about. Well, when we go into Termagants, it's 11 points of damage, which kind of sucks. There's some spill over here, so you can kind of ignore it when it goes into the small ones. Let's talk about the big targets we actually care about. Can we see? Let me just shift the screen. Yeah, all right. So here we go. So if you guys look, it's the one in the middle where there's some green. Because I know I had to kind of shift the frame. So right here under the Knight Valiant, it has a 2.3, which actually is pretty solid into a Knight Valiant. It has a PPP of 1.9 into a Land Raider, 1.3 into a Knight Despoiler. So these numbers actually are not bad. So why, Jonathan? Why do you think this thing sucks? Well, let's look at the damage. Boom. Let me just scroll back into the damage, and I got to get myself back into position. Okay, so we are on line number 49. I have highlighted there. Okay, so this is the damage that it deals. So into a Knight Valiant, that Caladius gravity tank is going to be doing 4.2 damage. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Terrain effects, it's going to be dealing 5.6 damage. Land Raider, 6.9. Lehman Russ, 8.1. Knight Despoiler, 9.2. Armiger, 10.9. So one of these things does not kill a baby knight. You have to have 2 to kill a baby knight. Guys, the points investment is not worth it, especially when we have so many truly amazing options in the normal index. Basically, just running as many of those freaking Guardians and Terminators as you can, and that big Warden block, that is the way to be playing Custodes right now. So that's the Caladius. Let's go back on to some of the other Forge World options. You might be surprised, but there are some Forge World options I actually do like. I know I was a little surprised when I realized that the Cronus Grav Carrier is actually a fairly good option. I haven't really been running him yet, but I really, really might. Let's look at some of the other Forge World infantry, okay? The Venatori, okay. I love the Venatori so much. The problem is they're too expensive. They're not bad models, though, and I am firmly convinced that we will be seeing the Venatori hit the tabletop this edition. It's going to have to wait for another points update. So they have an amazing concept. They move really quickly. I think the argument is settled. You're definitely going to be running spears now and not pistols because pistols got significantly nerfed. They get that Lance keyword, so they're going to be wounding a lot of things on 2s. They can always fall back, shoot, and charge. Very powerful, and they get to rapid ingress for free, which is a really big deal, especially if you're trying to rapid ingress like a big Terminator squad, and you also want to rapid ingress these somewhere else in the same turn. That's very powerful. I actually think Venatori are quite good. The problem is that they're 78 freaking points. 78 points... It's impossible. There's no way I can pay 78 points per model here. I could pay 60. I would actually be very happy to pay 60, which is 5 points more than they were last edition. We're going to need to see a points reduction before these guys can really be used on the tabletop. I'm sure there's going to be someone out there who can use them to good effect, but taking them at 78 points per model is just going to take away so much else from your army that they're not hitting the table for me right now, but I do like them. Their rule set is actually something that we need and works really, really well. So I'm not doomsaying on the Venatori. I just need them to come down in points a little bit. Then we have the Sagittarum. I don't want to doomsay on the Sagittarum. So what I did is I figured out a way to take them. However, I'm not taking them. So they lost assault on their weapons, which is a big problem because now if you guys are looking at the normal GW open terrain layouts, basically what happens is firing lanes are pretty rare now. It's hard to get a good firing lane. And when you don't have a great firing lane and you can't advance, it's really hard to get your guys in a position to be shooting their weapons. Sagittarum's weapons are pretty good, but in addition, where literally every single thing that you're ever going to shoot is going to have cover, AP1 kind of doesn't cut it. They're hitting on 2s, which is great, but it's still only strength 5. It's not really going to be wounding that much, and they lost all access to wound rerolls. It's not like last edition where you were running Trajan next to your Sagittarum, and you were rerolling ones to hit and wound constantly. Now there's no wound rerolls. The only way to get the wound rerolls is to drop them out of a Cronus Graph Carrier, which, to be fair, is actually a pretty cool concept. You could drop them out of the Cronus Graph Carrier, they can light something up, and they can get full wound rerolls. But that's a one-time combo, which is a problem. It's a bit of an issue. One of the cool combos that one of my teammates came up with is they were actually including Inquisitor Greyfax with a Sagittarum. What that does is Inquisitor Greyfax gives the unit anti-psyker. So now suddenly the Sagittarum's once per game ability to give themselves devastating wounds can stack with the anti-psyker keyword, and they could easily just over the course of one round obliterate any Grey Knight squad or any Thousand Sun squad, which is actually pretty dang cool. It could also be really useful for focusing down Magnus the Red, your Mortarion, Vortex Beast, or anything like this. So there actually is some uses for Sagittarm. I'm not including them right now because I think they are fairly niche used, but they are fairly cool, and I can see a purpose of them. Now let's talk about something that there's literally no purpose of. We have the Custode bikes, Forge World bikes, basically all bikes. Yeah, they are pure dumpster fires, and they cannot be taken. They went up in points, they went down in lethality, and they actually went down in survivability, and they went down in mobility, and fly was nerfed, and they're somehow more expensive. It makes no sense. Which sucks because I was really happy to be running 12, 15 bikes in an army last edition, but basically all my bikes are sitting on the shelf now. So I'm not going to really spend much more time talking about these guys. Go watch my tier list review where I was talking about the Virtus Praetors if you want more information about that. Let's talk about the Ares Gunship. Ares Gunship is awesome, and he's actually had a reasonable stat profile. The problem is he's 580-ish points, and he just doesn't trade well enough, so I don't think you're going to be putting him on the field. Custodes are already an elite army. When you take this guy and you take literally a fourth of your army in this model has to be able to perform, and it really doesn't perform to the level that you might think it does. You look at its guns and you say, oh, those guns are quite good, but let's look at what the damage output actually is. All right, so here we are on the damage. So I'm just going to scroll down to the Ares. Ares is number 56. It is going to be right in the middle of the screen, just so you guys can see. It's number 56 right here. Let me see if I can actually highlight that. Yep, there we go. Okay, so it's a little bit highlighted. Sorry if it's a little hard to see, guys. It's just, it's what we're working with. So let's go look at the targets that we actually care about. All right, so it's Magnus Cannon. Here we are. Yeah, so it's Arachnus Heavy Cannons. When you combine both Arachnus Heavy Cannons, is going to deal 4.2 damage into a Knight Valiant. And then when you put its Magnus Cannon on top of it, it's going to deal an additional 8.6. So combine that, and you're looking at 12.8 damage into a Knight Valiant. It's going to take half the wounds off a Knight Valiant. That doesn't cut it. It will do 20 wounds on average to a Knight Despoiler, which is cool. It will do 20 damage to a Leman Russ, which is cool. But for something that costs a quarter of your army, and it will get focus fire down, it will be destroyed, man, it really just needs to be able to nuke the big nasty that it's meant to nuke, and it just can't quite do it. It can't kill a Satan, but to be fair, nothing can kill a Satan. It's not going to be killing a Walkrant. It will kill an Armiger. Heck, you might kill 2 Armigers with it, which is actually pretty cool, but it won't kill one of the big bads. So I just don't see it. Someone actually might use this thing to good use, and maybe I'll eat my words later. And I'm willing to accept the fact that I might actually eat my words on the Ares, but until I do, I'm not going to eat them. And that's just the way it is. So everyone, that is the video for the Forge World update. The ones that I will actually strongly be considering is I'm strongly considering how am I going to put the Venatarian. The Cronus Graph Carrier is actually very fascinating, and Sagittar may have a place. And then finally, the Ares actually might have a place this edition. As is right now, I'm not taking any of them. What I need to see to develop to actually want to take them is my Venatari need to come down to points. If I see them come down to that 65 points mark, I'm going to be experimenting with them for sure. But I think 60 is the mark that they need to hit to be really, really good usable. But they are a good solid unit, and I'm looking forward to putting them on the battlefield. Sagittarium needs some source of rerolls. That is a big problem, which means they have to go to the Chronos Grav Carrier. If we can get another source of rerolls through, I don't know, different detachments or updates, maybe the Sagittarium have a ton of play. But for right now, I'm leaving them on the shelf as well. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. It just means that they're not going to outperform my Custodian Guards or my Terminators or my Wardens, which I'm going to be spamming like crazy. So those are the ones I'm really looking for. The Caladius might have some play later on in the edition if it comes down in points. We could revisit them later. But for right now, the ones I'm looking at is Venatori are really, really cool. They're just too expensive. Sagittarium just don't work in the current detachment. They need they need some source of rerolls. Chronos Grav Carrier is a little too expensive. I just don't see the need for it because I can attach a Blade Champion to get advance in charge. But maybe I would want to play with maybe dropping Terminators and giving them advance in charge. That could be something in the future. If we had something like the Assault Ramp rule on the Chronos Grav Carrier, then I'm running the Chronos Grav Carrier. But we don't, which means that you're gonna have to get out before it moves, which kind of limits its use case. But until next time, everyone, that was all the Custodians for today. If you got value from this, because I did put a lot of work into these videos, please drop me a subscription and a like, and I will be constantly bringing you more information. Be on the lookout for my Custodes Quick Start Guide, where I teach how to play Custodes if you're interested in them, or I teach you some new combos that maybe you haven't thought about if you're a more experienced player. Until later, I hope you all have an amazing day, and happy crumping, my dear Wargamers.